At 82 years old, Bobbie Gentry has remained one of country music's most haunting mysteries, a woman who vanished at the height of her fame, leaving behind silence, rumors, and questions no one could answer. But just recently, a quiet ripple began stirring across Nashville. Bobbie Gentry has finally spoken. Not in a press conference, not in a flashy comeback, but in a hushed message whispered through close friends and a few private letters. And what she's saying has people inside the Grand Ole Opry deeply unsettled. After decades of being shut out and dismissed, Gentry is revealing what really happened behind the curtains of country music's most sacred stage. And it's not pretty. For years, people believed she simply chose to walk away. But what if she didn't? What if her silence was forced? What if, at 82, Bobbie Gentry is finally ready to tell the truth about the place that once crowned her and then cast her out? This is the story she never wanted to tell, until now. Bobbie Gentry's story has always read like a Southern Gothic novel. Dusty back roads, mysterious disappearances, whispered secrets, and her sudden rise in 1967 only deepened the legend. With Ode to Billie Joe, a song about a boy's mysterious death and a family's chilling indifference, Bobbie catapulted to fame almost overnight. She wasn't just another country star. She was eerie, poetic, and unapologetically in control of her image. But from the very start, there was tension between her and the institutions meant to lift her up, none more so than the Grand Ole Opry. Behind the rhinestone lights and polished performances, Bobbie always sensed something dark hiding in the shadows of the Opry. In those early years, she played the game. She smiled, sang, and posed. But privately, she resisted the rigid expectations placed on female artists. Unlike many of her peers, Gentry wrote her own songs, produced her own records, and refused to fit the mold of a demure country princess. The Opry, deeply traditional and heavily controlled by powerful men behind the curtain, didn't like that. She challenged producers. She made demands. And slowly, silently, she became persona non grata among the good old boys who ran the show. Invitations stopped coming. Appearances were quietly canceled. And the most telling sign, while contemporaries like Dolly Parton, Loretta Lynn, and Tammy Wynette were being embraced as Opry royalty, Bobbie Gentry was barely mentioned. She'd never become a member, never received that sacred Opry induction. Fans noticed, but the industry shrugged. Rumors swirled that she was difficult, strange, or unstable. But now, decades later, Bobbie's version of events tells a far more chilling tale. In recently leaked letters believed to be from Gentry herself, she claims the Opry's top brass blacklisted her after she refused to submit to their control. She wrote of meetings where she was pressured to sign contracts that would hand over her publishing rights, of being told, "You'll never make it in this town unless you obey." And when she refused, the doors began closing one by one. This wasn't a quiet retirement. This was exile. And Bobbie Gentry, proud and principled, walked away rather than be owned. Now, at 82, she's no longer afraid to say it. The Grand Ole Opry didn't forget her. They erased her. And that truth, finally spoken, is shaking the very institution to its core. By the early 1970s, Bobbie Gentry's career was still thriving on the outside. Vegas residencies, TV specials, headlining shows in Europe. But something inside her had shifted. She no longer felt at home in the industry that once praised her brilliance. Her relationship with the Grand Ole Opry had become downright toxic. While other artists were celebrated on that stage, Bobbie had become a ghost. There were no tributes, no invitations, no acknowledgments. It was as if the Opry had collectively agreed to scrub her from the history books. According to people close to her at the time, Bobbie felt betrayed. She would sit backstage at events and listen to executives speak about her in the past tense, as if she was already done. Despite being one of the most innovative voices in country music, she had modernized Southern storytelling, blended soul, pop, and folk into her records, and brought a new artistic credibility to female artists. And yet, that was the problem. She was too bold, too smart, too unwilling to play the quiet, grateful role the Opry expected of its women. Her refusal to be controlled didn't just anger the gatekeepers, it frightened them. Insiders from that era have since admitted that Gentry made the men in charge nervous. She asked for profit transparency. She negotiated her own contracts. She turned down televised appearances that demanded she lip-sync or wear revealing outfits. When producers pushed back, she pushed harder. Eventually, the Opry began replacing her with younger, more compliant singers. Behind closed doors, one executive allegedly referred to her as a storm in a cocktail dress, dangerous, beautiful, and best left outside. In recent whispers that have begun circulating among older Opry staffers, there's a growing acknowledgement that a coordinated effort was made to push Bobbie out. Her name was left off nomination lists. Her songs were quietly removed from radio rotations. She was boxed out of the very culture she helped define. But Bobbie never begged for her seat at the table. Instead, she started pulling away completely. She turned down tours. She shut down her production company. She canceled interviews. By 1980, she was gone. No farewell show, no press release. Just a curtain quietly drawn over one of country music's most unique careers. And all these years later, we're only beginning to understand why. The Opry didn't just forget Bobbie Gentry. They buried her legacy in plain sight. And now, at 82, she's lifting the lid on what really happened. Bobbie Gentry's quiet retreat from the spotlight wasn't just an artistic decision, it was survival. After years of subtle blackballing, muffled mentions, and whispered warnings from industry insiders, she realized something chilling. The Grand Ole Opry and the institutions surrounding it didn't just want her out, they wanted her erased. The woman who had once been hailed as the future of country music was being strategically deleted, not because she had failed, but because she refused to fold. In private, Bobbie began to confide in a handful of friends. She spoke about feeling watched, monitored, how anytime she'd consider speaking out, whether about pay gaps, exploitation, or the psychological manipulation behind closed doors, someone from the inside would get wind of it and shut her down. She mentioned meetings where powerful executives warned her to stay grateful and remember where you came from. But Bobbie didn't come from the Opry. She came from Chickasaw County, and she wasn't about to let men in suits decide her fate. One especially disturbing encounter, as recently revealed in a letter authenticated by a family friend, took place during a dinner meeting in Nashville in the late 70s. Bobbie had been approached about returning to the Opry stage for a tribute show. She arrived excited, hoping for reconciliation. Instead, she was cornered. The invite had been a trap to pressure her into signing away creative rights to a vault of unreleased material she had recorded. When she refused, the mood turned cold. A top-ranking figure allegedly leaned in and said, "We made you, Bobbie, and we can unmake you just the same." After that night, she told her inner circle she was done for good, not just with the Opry, but with the whole town. In the years that followed, she watched silently as others took the paths she helped pave. Her innovations in music video storytelling, theatrical stage design, and self-written concept albums were mimicked by artists who never knew her name, and those who did know it rarely dared to speak it. The Opry never issued a formal statement on her departure. In their world, it was as if she had never been. And that's what makes her recent stirrings so powerful. Because now, at 82, Bobbie Gentry is finally talking, not through social media posts or staged interviews, but in deliberate, carefully chosen ways. Letters, conversations, old recordings that might soon be released. She's letting the truth leak slowly, not for revenge, but for clarity. The world forgot her, but she never forgot what they did. In her most revealing message yet, Bobbie Gentry reportedly detailed the psychological toll the industry, and particularly the Opry circle, took on her. For years, fans believed Bobbie simply chose to live a private life. But according to a trusted source who claims to have read her handwritten notes, the truth was far darker. She didn't just leave because she wanted peace. She left because she feared for her sanity. The Opry which once presented itself to her as a home for authentic artists, had become something far more sinister by the mid-1970s. Bobbie was pressured to conform to an image she never agreed to: submissive, soft-spoken, and grateful for scraps. She was ridiculed for her independence, for managing her own career, and especially for producing and writing her own material. While male artists were praised for being visionaries, Bobbie was seen as difficult. That label followed her through every green room and contract negotiation, always whispered with a smirk, "She's trouble." Behind the glitz of rhinestones and spotlights, Bobbie described the backstage environment as a cold, transactional machine. There were no friends, only alliances. And if you didn't play the game played you. At one point, she hinted that personal relationships she had off stage, rumored romances with producers, and even a few powerful names inside the Opry, were twisted into tools of control. Secrets, she claimed, were currency, and those in power held the vault. One producer allegedly told her after she refused a collaborative deal, "You'll never walk that stage again, Bobbie, and in 5 years, no one will remember your name." Those words haunted her. Not because she feared fading away, but because, deep down, she knew they'd try to make it true. And for a time, they did. Bobbie's name disappeared from showbills. Her music, once played nationwide, was slowly phased out of rotation. Journalists who tried to reach her were redirected, often warned not to dig too deep. Former collaborators claimed she'd gone reclusive. Some even suggested mental illness, but the letters she left behind, sharp, lucid, and emotionally detailed, tell a different story. She wasn't broken, she was silenced. Her absence was a protest, a quiet refusal to be used, molded, or manipulated. But now, at 82, she's begun to share the outlines of what really happened. And for the first time, the silence that once protected the Opry's image might be cracking. Bobbie Gentry didn't vanish. She was buried alive in a system that feared what she represented. A woman with a voice, a pen, and no leash. As Bobbie Gentry's story begins to resurface, the veil that once protected the Grand Ole Opry's polished image is starting to unravel. In her quiet revelations, shared through letters, voice recordings, and confidants, a darker truth about the institution emerges. Bobbie spoke of an inner circle at the Opry, a group of gatekeepers, mostly men, who controlled who got stage time, radio play, and award recognition. They weren't just booking shows. They were orchestrating careers and burying the ones they couldn't control. She described it as a kind of velvet prison. You could be on stage smiling, singing, and glittering in sequins, while behind the curtain, you were being watched, shaped, and censored. Bobbie recalled specific nights where she was warned not to perform certain songs she had written about pain, freedom, or injustice. She was told they were too political, too emotional, or simply not what the Opry crowd wants. But what they really meant was, they were too honest. In one particularly chilling account, Bobbie mentioned a night in 1976 when she was asked to change a line in one of her new songs. She refused. The next morning, her name was mysteriously pulled from a scheduled appearance. No explanation, just silence. It was the first major warning shot, she said. After that, the calls slowed, the invites dwindled, and the gossip spread like wildfire. She's difficult. She's losing it. She's too proud for her own good. It wasn't just professional sabotage, it was character assassination. Bobbie's letters imply that the pushback didn't come from one man or one moment, but from a system built on obedience. And she wouldn't obey. She wouldn't trade her truth for applause. She refused to become a symbol of sweetness while choking on bitterness. Perhaps most disturbing was her account of a meeting she was invited to with several senior figures in the Nashville elite. They spoke in polite tones but delivered what she called a veiled threat. She was told to reconsider her image and to let go of some of her more rebellious ideas. The message was clear: fit in or disappear. So she disappeared, not because she was defeated, but because it was the only form of control she had left. The Opry didn't just fail Bobbie Gentry, they tried to erase her, but they underestimated something. Silence isn't always surrender. And now, At 82, her voice is returning, not as a song, but as a reckoning. As Bobbie Gentry's quiet revelations continued to ripple through hushed circles in Nashville, one truth became impossible to ignore. Her silence all these years wasn't weakness, it was survival. Part 7 of this story turns the spotlight on the years following her retreat, where whispers filled the void and the Grand Ole Opry hoped time would erase the memory of what they'd done. But instead, something else happened. Bobbie's legend only grew. In the late 80s and early 90s, fans began sending letters to stations and labels pleading for a comeback. Documentaries were pitched, retrospectives proposed, but each time someone tried to bring Bobbie back into the light, unseen forces seemed to intervene. One journalist, who'd attempted to produce a tribute series about her life, claimed in a 2003 interview that they received pressure from certain Opry-adjacent executives to leave her name out of the narrative. They were told she had abandoned the industry and didn't deserve to be romanticized. But that was never true. Bobbie hadn't abandoned the industry. She had been driven out. While other stars were celebrated at anniversary shows, awarded lifetime achievement honors, or brought back for grand curtain calls, Bobbie remained in the shadows. It was as if her existence was too inconvenient. She had known too much, said too much, and refused too many deals. The Opry, once eager to showcase her talent, now treated her like a ghost. But ghosts don't go away, they haunt. Bobbie Gentry's absence became its own presence. Her music continued to sell. Her influence echoed in the work of modern artists, Casey Musgraves, Brandi Carlile, even Taylor Swift, all of whom cited Bobbie as a forerunner in blending storytelling with fearless independence. The irony? The same industry that once silenced her now quietly borrowed her blueprint. In one striking revelation, Bobbie reportedly told a close friend, "They wanted me to be Loretta Lynn, with less mouth and more cleavage." That sentence alone tells you everything about the era she was navigating. She wasn't being asked to sing, she was being asked to play a part. And Bobbie Gentry never was an actress. Now, at 82, her reflections don't sound bitter. They sound mournfully honest. She doesn't name names to destroy. She simply names truths so they no longer control her. Because the greatest power the Opry ever had over her wasn't the stage they denied her. It was the silence they demanded from her. And the fact that she's breaking it now, on her own terms, means they've lost that power too. By the time Bobbie Gentry reached her 80s, the myth of her disappearance had taken on a life of its own. Fans had written entire books trying to piece together her life after fame. Some believed she was living off royalties in rural Mississippi. Others insisted she had quietly remarried and was living under a different name. And while fragments of the truth leaked out over the years, a blurry photo here, a family friend's quote there, nothing compared to what finally began surfacing in whispers during her 82nd year. In a quietly arranged interview, never aired on television, but transcribed and passed among a select few industry veterans, Bobbie sat down with a trusted confidant and laid bare what she called the slow heartbreak of country music's highest temple, the Grand Ole Opry. "It's not a building," she said. "It's a machine, and you either feed it or it breaks you." She described the Opry as a glittering surface hiding a backroom culture of male gatekeepers, silent enforcers, and transactional loyalty. According to Bobbie, the organization had a do-as-you're-told policy, especially for women. Sing the songs they approve, say the words they write, and never, ever question the men in the suits backstage. Bobbie recalled one particular incident in the 1970s when she declined to appear on a televised Opry special that, she claimed, had been changed last minute to feature a well-known male artist accused of mistreating multiple women. When she refused, not only was her segment pulled, but she noticed her bookings began to thin out immediately after. She never received an official explanation. She never got a call, but she got the message. "They don't blacklist you," she said. "They just slowly stop saying your name." Her words didn't drip with resentment. They bled with weariness, like someone who had watched too many others crumble under the same machine. "I saw girls lose their minds trying to belong," she said, and I saw them get used up, smiled at, and forgotten. What stung the most for Bobbie wasn't just how the Opry treated her, but how it pretended not to. For decades, fans would show up to shows hoping for her name to be called. Radio specials would gloss over her hits. Documentaries would include her music, but not her voice. It was a slow erasure, carried out not by shouting her down, but by never letting her speak up. Now, in her 8th decade of life, Bobbie Gentry isn't asking to be welcomed back. She isn't interested in awards or tributes. But what she's doing, by speaking, even in quiet circles, is reclaiming a piece of herself that was never theirs to silence. Her life may have veered away from the stage, but in truth, Bobbie never left the Opry. The Opry left her. As Bobbie Gentry reflects on her life at 82, there's a strange sense of peace in her words, as though the silence that once felt like exile has become a kind of freedom. In the final part of this story, we come to understand that her disappearance from the stage wasn't a vanishing act. It was a conscious rebellion, a final song that she refused to sing for anyone but herself. She never held a press conference. She never did a farewell tour. She simply walked away. And now, decades later, the world is still catching up to the truth she carried with her. Bobbie didn't disappear because she had nothing left to say. She disappeared because no one in power wanted to hear what she really thought. They wanted the voice, the face, the mystique, but not the woman behind it, not the truth she carried. But the industry never forgot her. Quietly, many who knew the back halls of the Opry whispered her name with reverence. Songwriters she mentored in secret still mention her impact in hushed tones. A few newer country artists, particularly women, even cited her as an invisible influence, someone whose career warned them what it might cost to speak too soon or shine too brightly. The most haunting moment in the transcript of that off-camera interview comes near the end, when the interviewer asks her, "Do you think they'll ever truly understand why you left?" She pauses for nearly half a minute before replying, "No, but they don't have to. I understood. That's what saved me." And there, in those few words, lies the bittersweet truth of Bobbie Gentry's life. She could have chased the limelight forever, could have toured well into old age, accepted every Hall of Fame nod, posed for photo ops with smiling executives who once erased her name from the call sheets. But she didn't. She chose to preserve her soul over her spotlight. Today, Bobbie Gentry lives far from the stages that once tried to shape her. Her days are quiet, her family close. Her songs still echo through radios and vinyls, but her voice, her real, unfiltered voice, is only now being truly heard. Through the cracks in the industry's polished facade, through the stories shared in back rooms and interviews never aired, her truth rises like a final verse. At 82, Bobbie Gentry may never take that Opry stage again, but she's finally taken back her narrative. Not as a legend trapped in mystery, but as a woman who wrote her own ending. And maybe that's the greatest encore of all.